Hi, I'm Brittany, a neurodivergent mum and speech pathologist. This is Not Just Theories, where I share what actually works in my real, messy life. Because life doesn't follow a theory. Here's what I actually do. Hi everyone, and welcome back. Today's episode is going to be about overstimulation. And I'm starting with a bit of a theory that I saw online that stuck with me. So the creator of this post was really pushing back against the idea that our children are overstimulating us. She is not saying that children are not overstimulating, but what she was saying was through this brilliant visual. So she took a glass and started pouring water into it slowly. So she was putting in a bit of water for the noise of the washing machine in the background, a bit of water for the clutter on the floor, some more for some stress from work or the news that you scrolled past, or the fact that you're hungry but haven't eaten lunch, and she kept pouring until the glass was nearly full. Then she said, "There's your kids," and the water started overflowing. But she wanted to highlight, are your kids the reason that you're overstimulated? Or were they just the last drop that made the glass spill over? The image really hit me because my kids, they're not the enemy. They're not the root cause of my overstimulation. It's actually all the other inputs that fill up my glass throughout the day that push me right to the edge, and my kids just tip me over. So today I'm going to share another analogy that I've been thinking about because I'm not a glass of water person. I'm a tea drinker. So to me, overstimulation feels a lot like a boiling kettle. When you put a kettle on, it's totally fine at first, but if the heat keeps going, the pressure builds, and eventually it gets really loud and it starts screaming at you. So in parenting, that's how overstimulation works for me. If I let the heat build all day, noise, clutter, stress, screens, hunger, eventually I hit that screaming kettle stage. But here's the good news. There are 3 different ways we can stop that kettle from screaming. So first, you can turn down or turn off the heat. So that's what this episode today is about, reducing all the inputs that are winding up our systems in the first place. Second, we can vent some steam. So that's things like calm down strategies, reset moments. I'll cover those in another episode. And the third way is that we can remove the noisemaker altogether. So in other words, how to avoid snapping or shouting when we're boiling over. And that's a whole conversation too. But today, we are sticking with just that first piece, turning down the heat. What can I do, and what do I do in my daily life to just stop so much stimulation from building in the first place? One of the biggest things for me has been my loop earplugs. You've probably seen them advertised. They're basically little earplugs that don't block sound entirely. They just turn down the sharp edges. When I first got them, I still remember the first tantrum that I sat through with them in. Normally, I would just feel every nerve in my body clench with every scream and everything would just get so tense. But with the loops in, it was like someone just turned the volume knob down enough so that I could stay calm. So I could hear my child without actually being physically attacked by the noise. So it prevented my nervous system from escalating and then doing that awful co-escalation cycle of me getting more stressed and that making her more stressed. So, these earplugs are not perfect. I personally can't wear them all the time because I start noticing things like my own heartbeat and my breathing, and that drives me a little bit crazy. So for me, they're something to use in those peak moments when there's too much noise coming from externally. I put those loops in when the big tantrums are happening. So just to turn that heat down on the nervous system as it happens. Some people wear them all the time, but yes, I get way too sensitive to the internal noises and they aggravate me as well. Listening to my own breathing and heartbeat is just too much. But that's because I'm actually really sensitive to noise. And this is something that I don't think I realized until I had kids, how sensitive I was to noise. I used to be okay in noisy environments, but it was because I always had a quiet retreat at the end of the day and I had lots of quiet time. It's one of the things I like the most about being back at work is that I have this lovely, like reasonably quiet, calming car drive home from work at the end of the day, where no one is talking at me. So I think acknowledging that I'm really sensitive to noise has meant that I've been able to start using a lot of strategies to reduce the amount of noise around me. So the noise at home that is another heat source for that kettle analogy are things like the dishwasher, the dryer, the washing machine. In our house, we're in a small 2-bedroom apartment. They're all in our kitchen. We just have a laundry cupboard in our kitchen. And so that kitchen is also adjoined to our living space. It's open plan. So when they're all running, the hum just builds and builds. And so one of my simplest tools is just turning off as many machines as I can in my house. If I notice myself buzzing with stress or my shoulders starting to creep towards my ears, my fingers starting to clench, I just pause the machines. And it's just an instant relaxing, at least one notch for my body. On this noise front, I have made peace with being that parent who takes the batteries out of noisy toys. We had, a little push walker that my kids loved, and honestly, they pretty rapidly forgot that it had made noises. So just take the batteries out of almost everything as soon as they enter the house. And no one really misses it. My kids make enough noise on their own. They don't need their toys to make the noise for them. So it's just about prioritization. I'm sure my kids love noisy toys. When we go to playgroups and things and they have access to them, they do love them. And a part of me used to feel guilty that they didn't have that at home because they loved it so much whenever they came across them anywhere else. But actually, you know what they love more than noisy toys? They love a parent who's not screaming at them. So this was one of those trade-offs for me. I manage my heat level, my boiling kettle, by pretty much not having noisy toys in my house. A few do sneak in every now and again, but most people who know me know that I don't like them. They know that the batteries might get removed or they might get donated depending on the specific toy. And everyone's been pretty on board with it. Like my parents, they try not to buy us noisy toys. My mum felt awful actually at my son's birthday. She gave me a toy that she didn't realize had made noise until we got it out of the pack and all of a sudden the noise was happening. So, once you explain to people what your needs are, they're happy to help you meet them. And if they're not, well, then you can donate that toy. You can remove the batteries. It can be a special toy that maybe lives at the grandparents' house if it makes too much noise. There's different ways to get rid of those noisy toys. Also on the noise front, I'm going to be pretty clear from this that noise is one of the biggest sources of overstimulation for me. I protect quiet time for myself. And so I don't use nap times to clean, or not the whole nap time to clean. I always try and take that first 15 minutes after I've put my kids down for a nap to sit on the couch just in stillness and quiet. Because if I run around doing chores every second that my kids aren't awake, I am just running my system on high heat all day long. So I make myself sit down, sometimes with a cup of tea, sometimes just zoning out on the couch, staring into space. Sometimes I actually sit and eat lunch. And that last one is big because hunger is a hidden heat source that really sneaks up on me. It's really hard for me to remember to eat during the day, especially when I'm busy with the kids, especially with all the dietary requirements that we have. There's not as many like grab and go snacks or pre-packaged foods that I can just eat. So I notice, it happens all the time. I lose my cool and then later I realize actually I haven't even eaten breakfast today and it's 2:00 in the afternoon. No wonder I boiled over. So I'm working a bit harder now to pack myself snacks like I do for my kids, eating more than just, the last 2 spoonfuls of cornflakes in the bowl after they finish. I try and actually eat a solid meal. I'm not great at it, but I'm working on it. Another source of stress for me that really creates that overstimulation is touch, because I am still breastfeeding my youngest and I breastfed his older sister until after he was born. So I have had someone literally attached to me, sucking the life out of me for over 3.5 years now, without a break, because I breastfed through my second pregnancy. And that is already a lot of physical touch and physical demand on my body. So the second my kids start doing other parts of touch, like climbing all over me, I really feel like my skin is buzzing. And that's a signal to me the heat is building. I need to try and limit unnecessary touch throughout the day so that when my children need closeness, I've got more capacity for it. So if they're in a climbing mood, I try and set up a little climbing frame or take them to a park where they can get that climbing feeling out, because they don't need me for climbing. They need me for closeness and comfort. That one's hard to replace. So if I want to be there for them when they want cuddles or to just be on me, or they're cold or they're feeling sad, then that means that when they're just happy and boisterous and just wanting to climb, that's the time I can really reduce the heat by making them climb on something else. Another overstimulating thing for me is screen time. And this one for me is really tricky, because sometimes just sitting and like scrolling through Instagram on my phone, it feels like downtime, but it's actually stimulation. It leaves me like a bit agitated sometimes, like I've just put more heat into the kettle instead of turning it down, which is what downtime is meant to do. So it's still a work in progress for me. It's still my instinct the second I've got a little bit of downtime is to pick up my phone. But I'm trying to notice that and reduce it. So because I don't want to have my 15 minutes of downtime turn into something that's making everything harder. I have few enough instances where I can manage that. Wasting it feels counterproductive. Another thing that I do to reduce the heat, reduce that input, is to get outside. For some reason, loud noises don't quite feel as loud outdoors. Inside things echo off the walls and the tiles, whereas outside the same noise just dissipates a little bit more, even though there's other sources of noise outside, the wind and the bird and there's cars and, all of that other stuff. It doesn't hit my nervous system the same way. So if I'm really finding myself overstimulated and we haven't been outside that day, I try and get out, get to the park, just get to the patch of grass across the road. It's not so much about reducing the noise, it's about reducing the echo of the noise and that contained pent up feeling that contributes to that overstimulation. So that's a few different strategies, and I think it's all about sort of recognizing what other sources of heat other than your children for you, what is it that contributes to your overstimulation? You might be really sound sensitive like me, but other people have other senses. So, I'm not particularly sensitive to like feelings of grime on my skin. So I can go days without a bath or shower and it doesn't bother me. But other people, if they haven't had their shower that day, it already just sets their nervous system to be, really overstimulated and cranky. So noticing for you what other things, and I think people often call it self-care, but I think phrasing it this other way of what is it that helps your body be turned down a little bit, to be calmer, to set yourself up for success so your children are less likely to make you hit that boiling over point, that real screeching kettle's ready. What can you do to turn that down? So I hope that analogy's been helpful for you, thinking about how can you turn down that heat. So for me, using the earplugs, managing background noise, reducing our noisy toys in the house, protect those quiet moments. So, instead of, if I know my kid's going to be asleep for 45 minutes, instead of rushing around for the first 30 minutes and then thinking I'll take my 15 minutes of break at the end, I always take it first, because otherwise I felt like every time I'd finish that 30 minutes, he'd actually wake up at the 30-minute mark instead of 45 minutes. And it always felt like a personal attack. Like, of course you wake up just when I'm trying to have quiet time. So now I prioritize the quiet time. I do it first. And then if I've got chores and things that I need to get done, I rush around and do them in the second 30 minutes. So that if my child wakes up a bit early, they're cutting into chore time and not into quiet time. So it's little shifts like that. I try and make sure I eat so that my body's not too hungry. I try and set touch boundaries or redirect my children away from touching me when they don't actually need me. They just need something like a climbing frame. I'm trying to get better at setting screen boundaries for myself. That one's an ongoing process. And then also that shift outside as much as I can when the weather is okay. So none of these stop the kettle from ever boiling. I definitely boil over sometimes, but they do give me some more space before I hit that loud whistling, I can't take it anymore point. And the more I practice, this is an ongoing process for me, I'm getting better at spotting when that heat is building. So remember, your kids aren't the whole kettle. They're not even the whole heat source. They might be the cause of that final whistle, but it's everything else underneath, noise, for some people, clutter, hunger, stress, and that's what pushes us there. So this week, try and take some time to notice what's actually heating up your kettle. So is there a way that you can help turn that down so that you've got more capacity to deal with the overstimulation that does come with kids? Next week, I'm going to be talking about that second piece, which was venting the steam. So things like what I do when I've already noticed that I'm getting overstimulated to help calm my system back down. So not reducing the heat, but how do I vent what's already there? And then the week after that, I will tackle that third piece, which is how to keep myself from shouting or snapping when I do boil over. Again, I am absolutely not saying that I never snap or boil over. In fact, I probably do it more than other parents that I know, because this is really hard for me, and that's why I'm talking about it, because I'm not happy being that parent that shouts at my children, and it's something that I don't want to be. So I've been really working on it, and it's helping, but I'm not all there yet. So hopefully this is helpful, and I'm hoping that it's helpful for me as well to sort of think about different ways of reducing that overstimulation. But today was just about that heat management, because everyone knows regulating your kids starts with regulating yourself. And I am not great at regulating myself. So that's where we're starting. I hope this has been helpful. And I look forward to talking to you next week about how I vent the steam. Thanks so much for listening to Not Just Theories. I really appreciate you being here. If this episode resonated with you, the best way to support the show is to follow, leave us a rating or review, or just share this episode with someone else who you think might find it comforting or useful. I hope to see you back here soon.